All right, we've hit the go live button and we are now live with everybody. Welcome to the show. I am your host, RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at criticalblast.com. And we are bringing in as many people as we can cram into the stream right now to celebrate the launch of our new anthology, The Devil You Know. Andra in here.
Kevin,
Hello,
I'm crap.
Andra.
I thought we had something.
Sorry.
Hello.
We're trying.
How are
We're
you?
working with Flintstones technology here, so it's a little slow.
Pedal
We
faster.
just go clockwise around the screen, Brady Bunch style, and tell everybody who you are and what your story is, and then we'll come back around and talk about, just influences and the boring literary stuff, and then we'll try to get drunk and do some fun things. Steve and KD, while you're in the green room there, we will get to you. We can only have 6 on at a time, so we have to rotate people in and out. So
Steve
Jared,
looked like he was broadcasting from a cave, so maybe that was his problem. I don't know.
Jared.
Hey guys, sorry, I'm getting kind of a weird delay in the audio here, so
Okay, well, Jared, tell us about your story and why you chose to write it.
all right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
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 1 second.
I'm guessing you can't hear us.
Hey guys, sorry. I'm like I said, I'm having a weird delay here. I'm trying to minimize windows and see if everything's taken care of here. Yeah. So my story in the collection is called Not a Saint. It's about a young boy who decides to do something a lot of other children have attempted over the years. Stayed up all night on Christmas Eve to see Santa Claus. And he does it for the most unselfish of reasons and succeeds, but the encounter does not go the way that he imagined. So
That was when I got halfway through that one. All the stories when I was editing them, you can tell 2-3 paragraphs in whether or not this is something that you're going to just say, no, I don't need to read anymore, or I want to read this one the rest of the way and see where this is going. This has got potential. Jared's story was one of those grab you by the lapels and drag you to the end of it kind of thing. So that was a no-brainer to put in there. Y'all are going to really enjoy getting that one and going through it. Troy, take us into the future here.
I find that elements of science fiction and horror creep into about everything I write when it comes to fiction anymore. It seems to be a intertwining thread. But one of the things that fascinate me most about the era that we live in is the advent of artificial intelligence. And then when I saw the theme for this, now I'd grown up reading, great deals with the devil story, and Faust, the Devil and Daniel Webster, Jerome Bixby, who wrote a marvelous short story about a spiritual battle over an outhouse, if you can imagine. This has a long tradition. And when I saw the theme, I wondered how I can incorporate my own interests into how this works. And it's essentially what I view fiction as problems that you try to solve through the work. And it's my personal belief that the purpose of our existence is to learn how to love, and that's what defines us as human. And that should a machine ever love, in the sense that we know love as often a sacrificial thing, that machine would then become human. So, as I've studied artificial intelligence, and Margaret Bowden, by the way, is the authority on artificial intelligence for laymen. They may be able to think at some point, but can they feel? And if they can feel, what would they feel? But essentially, I came up with the idea that this vast infernal machine has a consciousness, and this consciousness escapes to Earth and finds love. So I thought I'd just take it all the way. I hear Stephen King doesn't use an outline, right? And I really do. I try to do outlines, but then I take a left turn at Albuquerque, and the outlines never work out. but I know where I'm going. I know how to get from A to B. But it's essentially, I wrote a love story, and that has science fiction and horror trappings. And the one thing about writing from the devil's perspective, and C.S. Lewis had this nailed down, you just want to take a bath afterwards. Because it gets gritty and that sustained kind of malice, which is how I've always viewed the adversary, at least in the Christian tradition, is just filled with malice and spite. And if you write in that voice for a while, you're like, oh, you need a break. But I'm happy with the way it turned out, and I'm grateful that it was accepted. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Again, a great story, an interesting take on things. A machine gets a soul, the devil's going to sit up and take notice, since that's a one-of-a-kind thing, and he likes to collect them. I agree with you on the summaries and the outline thing. My other publisher that I write for, he wants summaries of books before he accepts them as well. And I view summaries as sort of looking at the old Rand McNally roadmap. It gets you on Route 66, but then you got to stop and look at the huge ball of string, and then you got to pull it here. So that sort of a thing, it gets you in the right direction, but then you wander all over the place.
I've driven through Kansas. That world's biggest ball of string starts looking pretty appealing after about 2 hours in the prairie.
Henry, get into the details with us here.
Okay. Well, besides being a science fiction writer, I am also a performing storyteller. I've been doing that professionally for about 15 years. And there's a considerable difference between the science fiction space opera stories that I write and the stories that I tell when I'm doing a storytelling performance. Storytelling tends to go backwards because you're working more with a fairy tale or a folk tale setting, as opposed to, space opera by definition has to go forwards to when we can get beyond our Earth orbit and the moon. So I drew from a lot of the stories that I enjoy telling, that I've read. There are tons of folk tales that deals with the devil, people who get the better of the devil. One of my favorites to tell is one called Wicked John, and he's not a nice guy at all, but he does come out on top from of the devil at the end. He's still not what you'd call a heroic person, but he was sort of my first step into what I called the devil and the details. And the idea is that the devil swoops in on a guy who, in traditional colonial America style, just honest guy, curses and says, "I would sell my soul to the devil if this." And so the devil pops up, and he's too honest to do anything other than go through with the deal. But the devil decides to get a little greedy, as the devil would do, and that leads to his comeuppance, and what I'd like to think is a bit of a twist ending, as we somewhat redeem our honest guy and turn things against the devil. So, it's a kind of a traditional American folktale, I guess you could say, except for the fact that I wrote it a few months ago.
All right. And it does, it reads very much like something that you would have read in the 1700s and heard passed down in oral tradition, which is what I liked. I like the folktale take on that. This book has so many different flavors to it of pretty much the same kind of story. That I think there's going to be something in here for everybody to like. Kevin,
Hey, how are
take
you?
us through some choices here.
I'm Kevin Kangas.
And tell us who you are, by the way, because you do some stuff that people might have heard of.
I
Yeah,
saw
I've
your
done,
movie.
I've made 7 movies of varying degrees of good and bad. You
We
can't hear me?
cannot hear you, Kevin.
I can.
I
You
can't say.
can?
I can.
Yeah, I
Oh.
can hear him also.
I was gonna say, there's a
Sometimes that
little
happens.
blue
I'm
button
the
that
only one who
says
can't.
everyone can see and hear me. So if you can't hear me, it's lying. So who
So
can hear me?
everybody
Who
else
can't?
respond to him. Feel
I
free.
can.
Okay.
I can hear you.
So I guess the host can't hear me.
I'll
Well,
fill
anyway,
it in later.
Translate for him.
That may be a problem later.
Well, I've made some movies. Basically, the big one's probably Fear of Clowns, which Lionsgate put out back in 2002. But I've been writing since probably 1982 when I was about 12, writing a lot of fiction, short stories, which is why last year I started writing a lot of fiction, sort of rediscovering my love of short form fiction and things like that. So that's why I actually ended up starting working on the story. And it was really weird because I finished it and it had to do sort of with the devil. And that's when I saw this anthology was looking for submissions. And I thought, that's really fortuitous and odd. So I sent it to him. And a couple weeks later, I heard back and he was going to publish it. So the story is, it's a bit of a kind of a take on sort of the Richard Matheson Button with a little bit of monkey's paw thrown in about a writer who's having writer's block after having a bit of success. And all of a sudden, the stranger, it's called Stranger's Choice, comes to his door and offers a deal to help him out. And there'll be a price to pay in the future, but nobody's going to die, nobody's going to get hurt. So the guy doesn't believe that it's real, and he takes the deal, and some strange things happen.
Well, so I just want to say, Kevin, I saw your movie Hunting Humans.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I did. I saw your name. I recognized your name because I'm a horror movie aficionado, and then it said in your bio that you had written and directed that, and so I thought I'd look you up and see. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Thanks. It was
There's some.
very rough. It was the first thing I ever did, and we did it with Peanuts.
I know you did, but that's just it. The script had to carry it, and it did. And I thought you did a marvelous job.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
All right. So since I'm deaf to half that conversation, I was able to hear Troy, but I couldn't hear Kevin. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that I can hear Andra.
Hi.
I can
Hi,
hear
Andra.
me.
There's something about okay,
Yay.
the Florence
I
Henderson
am.
Square doesn't want to have any sound to it for some reason.
Pardon me?
I said the Florence Henderson Square doesn't have sound on my end for some reason, but you're coming in just fine here from Peter Brady's side.
He's making an
Okay,
obscure Brady Bunch reference.
I got it.
No.
I'm old enough to get it.
I'm way old enough for that.
My story, I was thinking about different people's interpretation of what is evil and what is not, what is right, what is wrong. And I just got this idea about a young girl who has a very interesting perspective on what justice is and how she has decided that she is going to judge, be judge, jury, and executioner to different people. Dara it was just a fun story to write. She was, in her mind, she is doing the right thing, even if it means someone breaks an arm or a leg or is injured. And then, of course, Vaneth, the devil, decides that, hey, this kid has some potential and I'd like to work with her. So that was
Yeah,
My
what I
story.
liked about what I liked about your story was that it didn't use the traditional Lucifer as the devil in question here, and there were a couple of stories like that. Uh, so I was not familiar with Vaneth, and I'm still not terribly familiar if she's an actual mythology character or.
She is kind of a combination of different entities. If there is a if there is a Vanna, I I did not know that. So
Well,
it was just an interesting character, and the name came to me, so that's what I went with.
You go with it when they come like that. All right, excellent.
Yeah.
Jared, I'm going to try to rotate you out for a second here so we can get Steve and then KD in here, and then we'll just round robin as best we can here.
Can you hear
Steve
me
is in
now,
the chat.
RJ,
He
or
says
not?
he can. I'm assuming that means he can hear Kevin, so that means that everybody out in the world was able to hear Kevin, and I was not.
Kevin tried you again. Can you hear him now?
You can't. Can you hear me now?
Nope.
I muted and unmuted just to see if that would do anything, but
Nope, totally silent.
Okay. I'm being punished.
And you know what? It's just, I need a real computer, I think it is. It's, this was unanticipated. This was unanticipated, like not having the cover ready 2 weeks ago when I sent it back to the designers, which I was telling Jared about, which is why the book is not on Amazon tonight. Everything got submitted to Ingram, and they kicked the cover back because it didn't have bleed around the edges. It was like the perfect size, but they're like, it has to fit the template. So I kicked it back to the designer, said, here's the template, just stretch it or whatever you guys do. Put black border on it. Like, absolutely, we'll do it. 2 weeks later, I get the cover back. And I put it in Saturday on it. There's no way in the world they're going to have time to get this up here. And sure enough, they didn't. So they're still processing the book, and it will hopefully be on Amazon tomorrow or the day after. And the description below will get edited to include that. Okay, I've clicked on Jared to remove him from the stream. He's still in the stream. Jared, you're not leaving the stream.
Try me.
Well, it's just that
No, I won't go. No.
no, hell no, he won't go. See, my mouse cursor is staying this little pointy thing no matter where it goes because it's just.
Is he running Windows 95? Does anybody know?
Probably, Windows 2000 Millennium. That was even worse.
Yeah, there's also a DDoS attack going on in the world right now, but I don't think that's affecting us. It's
You don't
affecting
think
phone
hackers would
companies.
want to crash your show?
Yes, absolutely. That's
This is
exactly what it
vital.
is. I believe the devil did it. Wait a second. Who said that?
You're wearing red.
Okay. This is true. I'm Gilligan. Have you all heard that theory about Gilligan's Island, that Gilligan is the devil?
It all
I've
makes
heard that.
sense now.
It doesn't surprise me, but I don't think I'd ever heard that one.
It does, because if you look at the characters who are on the island, the skipper is gluttony and wrath. Ginger is
Lust.
lust. Marianne is envy. Mr. Howell is pride. The professor was pride. Mr. Howell was greed. And I forget what Mrs. Howell was because I don't have my 7 deadly sins lined up. And then, and the skipper took up 2 of them. And then Gilligan was red, was the devil because he's always wearing red, and it's his fault they can't get out of that damn hell that they're in.
No, the problem was the professor couldn't figure out how to fix a hole in a boat.
Yeah.
Make a radio with coconuts and copper wiring, but yeah, a hole in a boat, totally beyond his capabilities.
But Ginger was hot, so who cared? Not me.
Marianne was cuter.
Really? No.
Marianne was
Well, not to me.
definitely.
Marianne is definitely the one that most people go for, in the Ginger or Marianne thing. And I think it's the girl next door bit.
Always go with the girl. Always go with Betty Cooper. Steve Oden, can you hear us?
Told you he's in a cave.
Steve couldn't hear us when we were in the chat earlier. So I'm thinking that Steve's got audio issues.
Can you hear anybody, Steve? Apparently
I
not.
can hear everybody but RJ.
Okay, we've had that before. We know what to do. We'll pass along what he says to you.
Steve, just tell us about your story and why you thought it was a good fit for this anthology.
He'd like you to tell us about the story and why you thought it was a good fit for this anthology.
The story is entitled Demon's Pint, Devil's Jug, and it's about moonshiners here in Appalachia. I'm a son of Appalachia. My family were sharecroppers in the mountains, and moonshine was a big deal. It was more economic than anything. But whenever I would hear the stories, my uncles and my grandparents would talk about who was the best moonshiner in the holler, who made the best moonshine. So I had the idea that perhaps some mortal might be able to make moonshine so good that heaven and hell would fight to get it. And so that was the kernel of the story. And I took a lot of liberties, but I tried to keep fairly close to my experience living in Appalachia. And I've written a syndicated newspaper column for over 25 years about Appalachia, the northern part, the middle part, the southern part. I've done all sorts of feature stories about the people of Appalachia and the traditions. So I think I'm fairly well grounded there. But when it comes to plotting a piece of fantasy in which angels and devils and demons fight over a jug of moonshine, that's sort of new ground for me. But I sort of like the way it worked out. I was surprised that RJ chose it for the anthology, and very pleased. I think if I had to describe the writing I did on it, it was probably closer to Manly Wade Wellman than anybody. So I like to put a little humor in my stories too.
It had a lot of I'm talking like he can hear me.
I hope everybody.
We heard you.
Yes.
I can hear you now.
Okay. It had a lot of the Americana tall tale kind of feel to it, which I really liked. And this is going to be fun here because not only has StreamYard gone down, but the site has gone down. I have internet access, but the StreamYard.com site has gone down to this DDoS attack that's currently taking the West Coast by storm. It is not responding to, I can get to other sites, but StreamYard is down. But it's also Demon's Pint, Devil's Jug. Try saying that 5 times fast. Is the second of 2 moonshine stories that are in this book. And one, Sarah Canavo, and Sarah, if you're coming in,
Really?
I won't be able to see you, but but hers is the one that leads off the book, called The Drinking Contest, and that is the traditional, the devil engages in a contest, and instead of a golden fiddle this time, he's going to grant the guy what it is his heart most desires, providing one can drink the other under the table. And well, he's hit up the guy who's in New Jersey making Applejack for most of his life, and he knows how to hold it. So we're okay. Internet is dead all over. I'm surprised we're all talking. I really am. I'm going to reboot this actual machine and see if that doesn't help anything, because now it's taken down AT&T. This is the way things go. You know what it is the devil doesn't want all of us talking about how he gets beaten all the time and so easily. So he's doing his best to make sure that nobody. What was it C.S. Lewis said? The devil, that proud spirit, cannot abide to be mocked, or words to that effect.
Words to that effect, yeah.
Yes.
So that's what we're doing every time we write stories where we defeat him. I was interested that nobody defeated him through prayer or with angelic help. It was we all defeat him on our own.
That's kind of the standard
That's
American.
why I'm down here right now.
One at a time. Henry?
I was going to say that's really the standard American folktale way to do things. It's you outsmart the devil, outfox the devil, outlast the devil, find some way to beat the devil at his game, but you do it on your own. Now, somebody might take that to say that you've got divine help keeping you going inside, but it's not expressly mentioned in there. So, it's like the devil and Daniel Webster. He didn't have, he got out of it on his own. And in Wicked John, the story I like to tell, Wicked John gets out of it on his own. So I think that's just the way we do things here. We can be religious as a people, as a country, but when it comes to going up against the devil, we're proud of our ability to turn the tables on him. I'm done.
Steve?
Yes.
I think
Hello?
you were saying something earlier about people beating the devil.
Say again.
I thought you were talking earlier about people beating the devil, and you and Henry were talking over each other.
Can you hear him?
I think that was Henry.
That
Okay.
was Henry. RJ is saying we started talking over each other, so I've shut up. So it's your turn.
And I think we got some delay because I'm hearing echoes from other people. Kevin, can I hear you yet?
I don't know. Can you hear me? I'm actually watching this on YouTube. Also, I put it up
That
just
would
to
be
see
a
if it
no.
would play. It's about 16 seconds behind. Just FYI. But it is on.
Can you not hear him, RJ? Can you
Not
acknowledge?
a bit. I can see his mouth moving.
Kevin said there's approximately 16-second lag between YouTube and us right now.
Well, that makes sense. Yes, if you're watching it
But
on
it's on.
YouTube, there is that delay. That's normal. That's to be. I don't know if that's to give you time with a dump if you have to do something with the broadcast, but yeah, I'm not watching it through YouTube. I'm watching it directly through the Streamlab interface here, which I would assume everybody else is too.
Yeah, I have both on. I just wanted to. I wasn't sure if we could respond to comments and things. I don't have that. I only have the private chat notice, and then live comments. I can't comment, so I went on YouTube on my other computer to actually respond. So. But he can't hear anything I'm saying anyway, so I could say anything I want right now.
You could.
Yes, you could. Do it. Do it.
You could take over.
Could.
You may as well. I'm doing a piss poor job of it myself here. This is Jared was in here earlier. We were talking before we went live, and he said he went out and looked at some of our live streams to see what to expect. And I said, and you came anyway, because Henry's been on a live stream we did with him. Henry, by the way, has published a series of comic books in the 1980s that I was going out and picking up helter skelter when I found them, called The Southern Nights. It was published by, help me out here, Henry, I don't have it in front of me
Comics
now.
Interview Publications.
I was
David
gonna say
Anthony
Comics
Taft.
Illustrated, but that doesn't sound right. So yeah, we talked on that, and I went to my local comic shop and did the Wi-Fi there, and it was frustrating for both of us, to say the least. At least we're not having the lag time here that we had before, but I think the internet has truly been killed here in Illinois, St. Louis area. because the reboot has not been helping. So what that does is that means I can't bring anybody else who's in the green room. So KD Webster is waiting out there for his turn. KD, I apologize. I can't get to you. This is the world right now. It's the big blue screen of just wait.
I don't suppose he would automatically come in if one of us kicked out for a moment.
No, he wouldn't. I would have to click on the add to the thing. Okay, well, maybe we're coming back up in here now. Microsoft gave me a new picture.
Here, make me an admin. I've got good internet here in North Carolina.
I've got to get to the screen.
Oh, that would be a problem. Yeah.
Yes, I'm totally out, and I don't know that I can actually do that in.
You probably can't.
Not through StreamYards.
That would be called, good computer security, which is,
Yes. Now, if I were able to bring up YouTube and StreamYard at the same time, like you would do on like a real computer, then I could probably through YouTube give you a wrench or something like that. Okay, so I've done the reboot. We're going to see if we get internet connection. It's looking
So Henry, what's your last name?
slowish.
Vogel.
Vogel.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
mobile. That's again the phone is on mobile right now.
Yeah. So yeah, I got in here. I was like, oh, maybe I should have put my last name in there too. But yeah.
I was just curious because he talks about the comic book Southern Nights. I owned a comic store for 18 years, so I was like, that sounds familiar. Like I think I saw that comic book at times. So, but what was that in the 80s? It was published because
It was. It carried over briefly into the early 90s. The X Thieves was another book I did.
Which one?
X Thieves. It only ran for 12 issues. We got like 36, I think, for the Southern Night, plus a few mini series and things like that.
Nice.
So when were you running the comic shop?
From like 97 to 2014, I think.
Okay, if you saw it, it would have definitely been back issue material.
Oh, yeah, we had a massive back issue selection, so
I'll
I'm
wander-
pretty sure I saw it, but I'll look it up later and double check.
I see it show up, and I'll wander into a comic shop, and so I tend to go check their back stock if they have a lot and see if they have any of my stuff. I even did 2 issues of Voltron the first time it came out. So
Awesome.
I keep trying to talk Henry into crowdfunding an omnibus of Southern Nights, but
we're up for that. It's just a question of figuring out the details that we would need to do, and plans to get together with all the partners. Well, the plague got in the way, so we haven't had a chance to sit down and talk about everything. But I am in the process of actually producing what I'm calling the artless comics. In other words, I'm writing prose stories about the Knights. I'm hoping to bring those out starting by the end of the year.
Good for you.
Nice.
all right. We're going to see Steve. I'm going to try and rotate you out here and bring KD in. Okay, so far so good.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Hey, KD,
Hey,
how you
we have
doing?
RD.
Hello. While you guys
Thank you
were
for
having
the
the
patience.
while y'all were having the issues, I was able to hear everything that was going on, but I myself was having like audio issues. For some reason, my Bluetooth isn't working, but like an hour ago, I got an alert. I'm in the Denver area, and we're apparently having some type of phone issues region wide.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that has anything to do with what you were talking about some type of cyber attack.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. There's a denial of service attack going on, and it's hitting the phone companies the worst right now. So I'm surprised we're online at all, to tell you the truth. So KD, you seem to have some familiarity with old Scratch because you keep talking about him on Twitter, even prior to your story of Mabel Foster. Tell us about that.
Well, to be honest, it all started for me. Sometime last year. I belong to this horror club on Facebook, but I'm a part of the club because I write vampire horror. But somebody had posted a picture, and it looked so spooky that I was like, I could write a story behind that. And so that's exactly what I did. And it originated just really focusing on the creepiness of the picture itself. But then as I'm writing it, I'm like, well, it'd be nice to put the devil somewhere in here. But I didn't want the devil as everybody knows him. I wanted him to have a more contemporary style to him. So I'm like, well, what's a little known name for, that people call him? I didn't want to call him Lucifer because, well, you got the TV show. So I'm like, well, how about Scratch? And I had the version of him that I have is him as like this fast talking, remind you of a used car salesman wearing his trademark purple zoot suit type of style. And Aunt Mabel, she actually became the first of a series. As I was writing her, I'm like, I could see this becoming, more than just one short story. So now she's the first of the urban legends. And it actually turned out I've written 5 more urban legends behind her. And all of them, the central character is Scratch. And the urban legends is basically, as most urban legends are, it's a cautionary tale, basically explaining something that's in real life. And in Aunt Mabel's case, it's like how you see like people talking to themselves. I don't want to say insane, but yeah, the clinically insane where you see them mumbling or talking. And Aunt Mabel basically explains that Aunt Mabel was cursed by Scratch because she broke the contract. And as punishment, Scratch has it so that anybody who comes in contact with Aunt Mabel, they instantly go insane. And since Aunt Mabel really wanted attention and to be recognized, the only people that could talk to her are people that are mad. So like if you see someone and it seems like they're talking to themselves, they're not really talking to themselves. They're having a conversation with Aunt Mabel. And so she became the first, and then after her, there's like 3 other urban legends, and each one basically explains something in real life. Hope that makes sense. But when I saw the opportunity to be a part of an anthology, I'm like, yeah, I got to get in on this. I got to get in on it. Especially when I saw the word Scratch, I'm like, yeah, this is going to be perfect. So when I got the response, I got to admit, that email made me smile from ear to ear.
Now, your story, you said contemporary look, but your story actually takes place, I would guess, about 60, 70 years ago.
Right.
It's the family tradition being passed down, family story.
Right. It originates back in the Depression era. And basically there's this grandfather and his grandson, and they're having a conversation. So the grandson, he heard about Aunt Mabel, but he doesn't know if Aunt Mabel is real or she's just a myth or a legend. So he decides to ask his grandfather about the story. So the grandfather, they're sitting outside on the porch, and intermittently throughout the story, the grandfather is looking out in the woods, and he's telling his grandson about the story, but he's telling it in such a way that it's more myth than reality. But then towards the end of the story, the grandson's father starts having a conversation with the grandfather. And
Don't
he's
give away
like,
the ending, man.
I'm sorry?
Don't give away the ending.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. I'm still new to this.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alerts.
But I've only been writing not even a good 2 years yet. So all of this is I still have that childlike wonder when it comes to writing and when it comes to listening to other established writers.
Kevin, I'm going to cycle you out here for a second here and bring Jared back in because I want to talk to a specific aspect of some of these stories. And maybe when I bring you back in, I'll be able to hear you. And you know what? I'm just going to quit giving notice because as soon as I tell the computer what I'm going to do, it says, no, you're not. Well, shoot, I will get Jared back in here, but I want to talk about children in stories involving the devil because we have a number of them where that was the case. And Jared's was one of them, and Andrew's was one of them. And KD, yours was as well because you have the kids asking the questions, and then you also have the kids who are involved in the tale being told. Well, look at this. It's actually cooperating.
Hey, can you guys hear
All
me?
right. So, Andrew, we haven't heard
Welcome
from you in
back.
a while. What were your why did you decide to go with a child protagonist? And you might want to fill me in on the age of your character here. I know she was young, but I don't know middle school, high school, preschool, that kind of thing. Andra, can you hear me?
Yes. I'm sorry. What was the question again?
What was it that? Why did you pick a child protagonist? And what was it like having her interact with the devil?
I don't know how. I mean, when I started thinking about what I wanted to write, this child popped into my head, and I wish I had a logical explanation for why I did it, but I don't. I just started thinking about the prompt, the call, and I don't know. I just got this image of this child, and then I thought, well, what purpose would a child play in the devil's plans? And so I just kind of started playing with that idea of how it doesn't matter how old you are, you can what you do influences other people and can draw the attention of someone who wants to utilize your special abilities.
There's something that evokes a visceral reaction in a reader or a viewer of a film or a book where you have, the ultimate evil brushing up against what should be the ultimate innocent, which is strange because when you look at children, really they're nothing but little sociopaths, and yet we treat them like little angels. Jared, you had, the child protagonist was very, very strong in your story. Did you know where this was going to go when you started? Because there's this threat of actual death of of children in this tale.
Right. And I guess, can everybody hear me? I don't know if the audio issues are worked out or not. Are we good? Okay. Yeah, we were talking about outlines earlier, and how we kind of get that skeleton of stories in place, and sometimes we veer off, but at least we've got the roadmap. I think the reason that I chose a child protagonist was not really to make the story darker, although I think that was maybe in effect makes it a little more disturbing. But I think that kids are in some ways easier to root for, and I think that children have at least until they get to a certain age, they have a certain amount of faith. We talk about the childlike faith or faith like a little child. I mean, we've heard of that before. And that strikes me as in some ways, I felt like that would create a protagonist that was kind of uniquely capable in the face of this. If we're adults and we're all hamstrung by our logic and our reason, and as Henry mentioned, we're not really going to call out, to some other force for that. Then children have that power of faith, that power of belief. I've got 3 children of my own. They're all 13 years old and younger. The teenager at least thinks I'm an idiot, but the other 2 still think I'm pretty good. And they
been there, brother. Been there.
Yeah, they'll go along with that. And there's a real simplicity to the way that they kind of look at some situations, and it seems very simple to them. And I felt like that was just the right tone for the character, kind of the message I wanted to convey. And I felt like that would be a protagonist that would be really easy to root for. This is the little guy. He's obviously outclassed, but if he comes out on top, you're going to be happy to see that. So,
yeah, it was. It wasn't very much like it, but it was very much like It, the Stephen King It, when you're reading it, because you have these very young and you have the very evil thing going on, and I really liked the contract that Lucifer was working under here, and boy, yours is the hardest story to talk about and not give anything away.
Spoiler alert!
But
Keep it general.
yeah, it's a Christmas tale, and we'll just leave it at that. It's a Christmas miracle, and you're not the first person to come up with the anagram idea, and
Right.
We've seen Santa's evil twin brother story done in picture book format, but the denouement, the way that you bind him back up, I think that was just brilliant, bringing that particular part of Christmas into things. And using that to bind the devil. KD, you actually have children die in your story. Was that always going to be the case?
Yeah, well, not so much as die, but basically to highlight the cruelty of Scratch, to show that he has no mercy. So he took what was the most precious thing to Aunt Mabel, and that would be her nephew. It had more like a Pied Piper type of feel to it.
That it did. I definitely agree. KD, are you driving?
I'm driving to the gas station. My house, I have a 4-year-old, and he's very rambunctious, and so I didn't want that to get in the way of what we were doing live. But I was also a little low on gas, so I'm like, well, let's go ahead and just drive to the gas station.
Okay. Well, my friend, I want you to be safe. So we've talked about your story. Appreciate your time. I'm going to let you go so that you can get to the gas station. Put your mask on, and we'll talk to you later, my friend.
I appreciate it.
Again for your story.
Thank you.
We get everybody's copies out as soon as we can. Take care, man.
All right.
Look forward to reading it, Katie.
We'll see if we can bring.
We lost RJ.
I took myself out. I clicked, and as soon as I clicked, the screen scrolled. So I clicked where the screen was rather than where I thought I had clicked. Let's see if I can do it again. We'll bring Kevin back in here. Now see if I brought his microphone with him this time.
Is this thing on?
It's on.
That thing
We
is
think it's on.
Nice.
How's it going? I wanted to see Katie's.
So
pump
whose
some
audio
gas.
did I lose, I wonder? So in reference to your shirt, Kevin, it really was you, not us.
Oh, okay.
I could hear every single square going on here except yours. And I don't know why, but the same thing happened to me last 2 weeks ago when we had the local comic shop guys on.
I said a lot of mean stuff about you.
Well, that's okay. I've been married 30 years. I'm used to that. So I wanted to talk about your experience writing horror because you've done a lot of horror film. And you know, you've written this book on Halloween. So when you saw this listing, I guess I'm guessing most of you saw the listing on Raylan or somebody copied it from Raylan and put it out to some of the sites. Why did you think, yeah, I'm going to put all this time and effort and energy into earning $20?
Well, it's like I told them. The funny part is that, you know, back when I was in high school, college, all I did was write short stories. I mean, I didn't pay any attention in class. All I did was write short stories constantly. And for a while, I tried to get published, and they were terrible short stories, though, because, you know, when you start off, you are horrible. And, you know, I submitted to like everybody in the Writer's Digest. Remember that big hardcover back in the day?
Yeah.
Used to go and, you know, submit to everything in there. And I got close a couple times, but, you know, whenever they're like, can you rewrite this and fix this? You know, I was in college and I was, you know, sex crazed. So I couldn't care less about, I was a terrible, you know, rewriter and, you know, period. So I never got accepted. And at that point, I started getting more into film anyway, once I took some film electives in college, and I started writing scripts. So I just ignored it all. And it wasn't until recently I started really going back toward fiction. And I had written that story, the Stranger's Choice, about 4 months ago, I guess, the first pass. And then I went through a couple other passes. And, you know, one of the guys, Steve Pattee, who's currently watching, he's a buddy of mine that runs horrordna.com. And he was one of the first people that read it, gave me some notes. And then another friend of mine, Ronald Malfi, who's a pretty well-known horror writer, read it, gave me some notes. And I did some more work on it. And that's when I actually saw your listing. And I was like, wow, this is, because I was thinking, you know, I'll send this out just to try to get it published, see what happens, you know. And I saw your listing, and it literally was the only place I sent it to. I was like, I'll send it. It seems applicable. This story, my story is not necessarily about the devil. I kind of leave it open to interpretation about whether he is or is not the devil. You know, he probably is.
It was either him or Rod Serling.
What's that?
It was either the devil or Rod Serling. We're never quite
Exactly. I'm a big Twilight Zone fan too. So anyway, I sent it to you, and that's when, you know, you know, I got the acceptance letter. And I mean, college me is just punching himself in the face, you know, having tried hundreds of times to, you know, fruitlessly. And then I try one time on the one story I basically have written in the last, you know, 5 years. You know, everything else has been scripts. I've written nothing but scripts for probably the last 15 years almost. So.
Well, that's good practice. But yeah, you talk about, you know, doing nothing in school but writing. I have my first book, by the way, here. This is from 8th grade.
Nice.
When our 8th grade teacher insisted we write a composition a week, and he didn't care what it was on. So I said, 1 a week, huh? Okay, chapter 1. And this is handwritten in pencil on lined paper. And the entire half of the year, I just wrote this war story in World War II about a vampire and a werewolf fighting for the Americans, and, you know, just started throwing all kinds of different monsters into it.
I'm envious that you still have yours, because the first book I started writing a book when I was like 12. It was the first real long thing I tried writing, and it was so bad that I ended up throwing it away when I was like 15 years old. I was like, this is so bad, and I could tell it was bad. I threw it away, but I'd like to have it today just to laugh at it, but I don't.
Exactly.
I have all my short stories, but
that's why I have this here.
that's cool. I envy you.
A whole school year of 1 a week.
Wow.
I don't have the first thing I wrote, which was in 1st grade, which was a play that actually got produced because I was in Tilden, Illinois. I was the Tilden Tigers. So being a comic book superhero fan, I wrote this play called The Mystery Tiger, and all it was a guy in a mask and a basketball uniform who would come in at the last minute whenever the team was losing and score the winning basket. Like that would be illegal.
Was this before or
Why-
after Teen Wolf? Because it sounds a little bit like Teen Wolf. Maybe you have a lawsuit.
This was 1972, so I'm going to say
See?
before.
You should sue
Before.
Jeff Loeb, the comic guy who
Absolutely.
actually wrote that movie. Some people don't know.
But my first grade teacher took that to the 8th grade class and actually had them perform it in the gymnasium in front of the entire school. And the Mystery Tiger was our janitor, who was like 7 feet tall. So he just towered over all of them with this mask on and threw the ball into the basket every time.
Listen, I don't want to scare anybody, but Troy is about to get murdered. I don't know if you see that guy over his shoulder, that person over their shoulder. I've seen this horror movie before, though.
It's my girlfriend,
go
and she's
viral.
bringing cake.
Oh,
Cake is poison.
Somebody drink cake. That would be an awesome way to go viral. Just somebody who wants
It
to
really
volunteer
would.
for that?
That would
well,
work. Yeah.
she tried to get murdered
Yeah,
right
we-
now.
Sacrifice here. I don't know if that's a good
Come on.
precedent to set.
This will be a time when I'm going to remind people that this is not our first rodeo. We haven't learned much from the other rodeos we've been in, apparently, but we're trying. Our first anthology we did was this book called Gods and Services, wherein I thought I could go ahead and do the cover. And first lesson learned. I did not do the cover. This was an anthology of short stories with people in it like Ivor Bloom, who's done work for Scholastic, John Della Rose, David J. Peterson, and a bunch of first-time people as well. This was based on the old Tony Randall film, The Brass Bottle, for those who are old enough to remember that. And it was a movie where Tony Randall's character buys this huge brass bottle and he's cleaning it up, and Burl Ives comes out of it, the genie. And
Holy
Burl
crap!
Ives
It's
like-
Burl Ives. No.
Yeah. And he's bound and determined now to make Tony Randall's life better, whether or not Tony Randall wants it or not. Which was, kind of the idea here, was that you walked into the old curiosity shop that pops up where it never was before, and then you can never find it again when you go back, and you buy like, a stack of Chinese takeout cartons or a Tiffany lamp. It's just a bunch of junk and knickknacks in there, and it's each one comes with an attached god who's not doing anything at the moment, and because you have now paid worship and tribute, that god is bound and determined to make your life better. Interesting thing about The Brass Bottle, Tony Randall's girlfriend was played by Barbara Eden before I Dream of Jeannie, and the idea for I Dream of Jeannie came out of that movie. Getting out of anthologies, our second book was hardcover. It's a superhero young adult novel by Stephen J. Mitchell called Bulletproof. This is book 1, Origins. It's a 16-year-old protagonist who wakes up one morning, wakes up on his 16th birthday precisely, because that's how things work in physics. It waits till the clock ticks. And he finds out the experiments that his father performed on him while he was an infant have come to their fruition, and he is bulletproof. Unfortunately, Cody has the attention span of a ferret on pixie sticks, and he's going to get himself killed despite being bulletproof unless his friends can help him focus. Cody lives in a world of superheroes, so he thinks that that's a valid career option, just like I did when I was 6 years old.
I shall fight crime.
Oh man, I had my parents buy me the Mighty Men and Monster Maker toy when I was a kid, solely because I was putting costume ideas together. And I went through the local junior college catalog when I was 10, and I was marking off all the criminology courses and everything I was going to need. I just needed somebody to come in and kill my parents so I'd be the orphan, so that nobody would tell me that I couldn't go out after 9 o'clock in costume. That was the only thing missing from my career was, the fact I had a curfew.
The crushing defeat to your dreams.
Crushing defeat. So we talked about, having the urge to write from early age. Kevin did, and I brought that up. Troy, when I first met you, you were already established as a published author, and that was, I'm not going to tell how old you are, but that was a long time ago.
Well, my children are now I'm sorry, what was your question?
I was going to say, when did you start getting into the writing bug? Because I know you were published when I first met you years and years and years and years and years ago.
I was blessed with my high school was so small that middle school and high school were together. But I had this English teacher, Ruby Nay, and she's since passed on. But that lady told me that I had genuine talent and that I should develop that talent, and that I should work at it. And so I did. And I've just been so fortunate. I had a marvelous professor in college, Elizabeth Arthur, whose work has been reviewed in New York Times Book Review, I think at least 3 times. 3 of her novels have been. And she gave me encouragement. And she was angry with me when I wrote genre stuff, because she, warned me against it. For the love of God, don't write genre. And I'm like, but I don't have any interest in being in academy. I don't want to be a literature teacher in college. I want to write. I want to do. And I think she was mistaken about genre. According to her, genre like horror, science fiction, detective, so on, it doesn't have growth in character. I said, that's the author's choice. You can have growth. You can have somebody who's changed by the experience. If somebody established that convention for genre, and it does exist, James Bond, can anyone say that he had a character arc? No, not in Ian Fleming's novels. But that's beside the point. I think she was
in bed with a woman. Sometimes he was not.
Yeah. Well, so I wrote literary fiction. I got published in literary magazines. I had a collection of mainstream literary short fiction published thanks to the National Endowment for the Arts. And then I got into art, and I've been painting and drawing for the last 20 years. And I just recently got back into writing fiction. And I've got to plug my own work here. They're putting out a Lunar Wars anthology early next year. And the premise is, why haven't we gone back to the moon, was the premise. And so you can make up whatever story you wanted for the sake of the anthology. And the name of my short story is starring Hedy Lamarr. And it's how Stanley Kubrick, Hedy Lamarr, and Andy Warhol saved the world from alien invasion. My head goes to some strange places.
So it's nonfiction?
Exactly right. And I tell you what, I got to say, guys, this has been marvelous for me, because I so rarely get a chance to talk with people who do this thing that we do. And I'm grateful. I'm really grateful. But yeah, I'm working on a novel right now. I feel I'm excited. It's exciting times we live in.
Andrew, what about you? How did you get involved in this? And then I'm going to rotate you back out and bring Steve back in. Andra.
I started writing when I was a kid, and about 4 years ago, I thought, wow, I'm 50 and I have not published anything since I was in high school. And so I started polishing up some things that I've been messing around with, and I submitted a couple. And my first story that was accepted was it was thrilling. I thought I was going to lose my mind, and the editor was fabulous, because I, at that time, had a huge problem with loving too many commas, and he edited my work, and he said, I like the story, but you really, really need to work on your comma obsession. So I took some classes to try to curb my comma addiction. And then I've just, the last 3 years, I've just been, I write in several different genres. And I hate to pick one genre, because I don't know, I'll see something and I'll think, oh my gosh, I've got this great idea and I want to write a story about elves, or I want to write a story about vampires, or I want to write a story about a 12-year-old girl. So I write in several different genres.
I love picking a genre and just coming up with the idea for it. And then I think that's why we're doing anthologies so often now, because I get this idea for a story and then I don't have the time to write it. So I'm like, you know what? I can find 20 other people to write something along these lines, and then I'll just put it in a book.
I know people.
I know people.
Yeah, I know people. I can contact people who want to do this and have the time. So suddenly, I'm in the role of editor, which I've been doing for 20 years for different websites, writing and editing other people's material and getting it published. Andrew, I took all your comments out and I replaced them with M dashes. It looks much better that way, by the way.
Good.
Plus, it gives it a larger page count, so we were able to spread it out that way. Henry, you've been storytelling for years and years. You said. When did you start writing things down and sending them out and getting a byline?
I actually started writing, then I stopped writing, and I went to storytelling, and then I went back to writing and kept up storytelling. But I am probably atypical for almost everybody else. I think you're the second short story I've actually sold. Most of my stuff, I've sort of skipped all that submission process. Back in the 80s, when we decided to get into comic books, I had the gall to think, I've never had anything published before, but I can get together with this friend of mine I met in college and write comic books, which I did. And that was the Southern Knights. And then on into the X Thieves. We got good critical receptions for it, sold a decent number of books, at least for the time. They would be actually bestsellers in this day and age, according to the circulation figures I see. But I just skipped all of that. We self-published the comic books, and then after 7 issues, Dave Kraft took over. So people will say, how do you break into the comic book industry? And I said, I don't know. I just started doing it. And when I got back into writing, I'll do a shout out to Bruce Bethke, who is I have a publisher, but the last couple of books that he's published of mine, he didn't even read. He just said, if you say they're ready, we'll put them out. He was too busy to get around to reading them. So it's been a situation where I have always managed to stumble past needing to submit and get a byline anywhere else. I just sort of created my own byline.
Just do it.
Yeah, it's there.
Make it happen.
Particularly in this day and age. This is the day and age when it's easy for anybody to get out there and do it. It was not easy to do comic books back in the 80s. That took a lot of work. Doing books these days, you still have to write them. That's a lot of work. No two ways about it. But publishing is a piece of cake.
Unless you take the stranger's choice, right, Kevin?
Exactly. That's easy.
Whoa.
Yeah. I will take that choice every time it's offered. Because I'm lazy and I like cashing checks. Steve, I know you got your regular column, but how did you break into writing? I mean, when did you know you had the urge to do this all the time?
Well, I always had the urge to do it. I just didn't have the time to do it. I was fortunate. I've supported my family with my writing all my career. But I was a journalist and a magazine editor and publisher. And I love that. But in the back of my mind, I always wanted to write fiction. And I didn't have a chance to do it until 2 years ago when I retired. I'm pretty old. And when I retired, I sat down and decided to look at some of the things I had done in the past, just as a hobby. Got them out of a dusty box, wiped all the dead insects off of them and looked at them, and they were horrible. So I decided that perhaps I had better polish myself with short form work. I was really lucky. Last year, the first year I actually submitted, I sold 10 pieces last year. I was surprised, and been in several anthologies and be in some upcoming anthologies. I feel like my best effort is in short form. To tell you the truth, I admire you guys that write novels. My brother, Scott Oden, is a historical novelist. I don't know how he churns those things out. I just don't have the patience to stay with it that long. But I do love short stories. It's always been something that I've wanted to do.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be writing novels. I brought some of my books here. I told y'all I got the bug in first grade, and then continued on through grade school and high school, college newspaper, serialized a story in that. But I didn't really get published until right about 2000, when I had this little novella piece here, which was Alice's Journey Beyond the Moon, which purports to be the third Alice story written by Lewis Carroll. And I had gotten the idea from Martin Green. I can't remember his last name now. Famous mathematician who annotated Alice in Wonderland. I want to say Greenbaum, but it's not right. Marvin Gardner. Yeah, this is weird. Anyway, this whole story was, annotated out to the side with real facts that were going on in Alice Hargreaves' life and Charles Dodgson's life at the time purportedly written, which would have been about the time of her engagement. And the whole preface of the book is that, hey, we moved some cabinets at Christ Church College in Oxford, and we found some old papers that had fallen behind it, and there were these mathematical doodles and treatises and this manuscript. And because I thought that would lend it some authenticity. I was in Conway, Arkansas, writing this, and when the book came out, I sent a copy to the local paper because that's what you do when you get published, right? You send it off to your local television stations and your local newspapers so that you can become the instant celebrity. And the guy scheduled an interview with me to talk about the book, and we met at the library. And swear to God, the first question out of his mouth was, "So when they found these papers, why did they call you up to examine them?" And I was like, "Oh, brother, you got to throw out your entire interview," because he literally thought that it was a Lewis Carroll story that I had been called up to authenticate and annotate. I was like, "Yeah, no, it's all fake now, brother. You've lost the plot on it."
But go along with it, man. That's how the Blair Witch guys get a lot of money.
Yeah, I was afraid, I think is what it was, of how it would blow back on me.
Yeah.
And then I started doing all the book reviews and comic book reviews for a website that's gone now. But while I was doing that, a friend of mine knew I did them, and he said, "Hey, you're gonna do this, do a review of the next Destroyer novel." And I said, "What's the Destroyer?" And he said, "Oh man, let me tell you." And he introduced me to Remo Williams, Warren Murphy's creation. And I read the four novels that came from Tor that year because they had just picked up the license. And I said, "Well, this looks like fun. I'd have a heck of a time writing this character." And it just so happened they had an anthology call for fan stories. So I wrote this heavily de-trademarked story of Remo Williams and Master Chun in a very gothic city that was overseen by a guy who dressed like Dracula to fight crime. And I sent it off, and it worked. And they're like, "Hey, we think you've got the voice down. Would you like to take over the series?" So twist my arm, and 3 books later, I'm getting to write Remo Williams the Destroyer for Destroyer Books. 3 books
Good
out.
for you. Good for you.
Two to the publisher. And it's just great fun. The difficulty in writing the Destroyer is that it's supposed to be political and social satire at some level, and
Satire is hard nowadays.
Oh, it's impossible.
it's Poe's law. You know, it's like every time I start to write something, a headline hits. You know, the book that I'm working on now, like I said, they've got 2 that they're editing, and I'm working on the next one to come after those 2. It's already come to fruition. It's basically Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Okay, YouTube's just going to take this thing right down. But yeah, that was the plot, was that somebody had Jeffrey Epstein-ish character like killed, and it could have been the president, or it could have been, you know, somebody else. It wasn't, but that was the whole MacGuffin of it. Jared, where did you get into all of this sitting down in front of a keyboard for the rest of your life business?
Well, I actually included this just in the bio. So, like you were talking about, I got started really young. I actually wrote my first story when, and that was very short. It was like, you know, 1 page, front and back, line notebook paper. When I was about 6 years old. My dad and I were talking, and I was saying, I want to write a story. He's like, sure, son, whatever, you know. I said, no, really, but I don't know what it should be about. And he said, well, write it about a dinosaur. And I said, okay, what's his name? He's like, Fred. I don't know. You know, he's just humoring me. But I took that off and, you know, went and wrote what I thought was absolutely a masterpiece. You know, 6-year-olds were just, you know, swooning everywhere. Everybody really loved it. And, you know, it really, I mean, it was fairly well received with parents and teachers and people that had looked at it, and I kind of kept doing it along the way. But it was really, you know, as corny as it might sound, I think that kind of stuff really sort of feeds your soul in a way that nothing else will. You know, if you've got that capacity, you kind of got that compulsion along with it. And so, you know, I'd written off and on through, you know, high school and college. And I got married and was sort of thinking, okay, this is something I'll kind of put away. You know, I'm a married man, family man. The kids are all on the way now. And then my wife, I have to really credit her, because she kind of found some stuff that I'd written, you know, a couple of years ago. And she's like, why don't you ever do this anymore? You know, what this is something, you know, I like this. This is something you really, you enjoyed. Why don't you dust some of this stuff off and start sending it out? And like any, you know, wise husband, I said, yes, dear. And, you know, continued on with it. And like I said, like Steve was talking about, you know, dusted a few things off and sent some things out. And, you know, like Katie alluded to, when you get that call, you get that interest, that acceptance. And it's like, yeah, this is something. This is a rush. This is you know, something I'd forgotten. And just really, you know, I have the day job. I think a lot of us do that. You know, we have to find something to pay the bills. But yeah, I think these kind of creative things, this feeds a part of your soul that maybe don't get fed anywhere else. So yeah, I'm hoping to continue on with it and keep going.
All right, Kevin.
Yes.
When are we gonna get to see Based on a Short Story by?
Well, I mean, if you see my Territory movies, you know, those are anthology films, and each of those segments is basically a short story set in that region. So I've been doing it because honestly, they're easier because you can shoot a segment, one of those segments, in 3 or 4 days, whereas to shoot a full feature takes anywhere between, you know, 2 to 4 weeks. You know, it just gets harder and harder, especially as you get older and older. And I'm so old, so easier to just get off for 3-4 days.
Oh, come on. John Cassavetes could knock those out in a week, man.
Well, he also has a lot of money. There's the other difference. You know,
Yeah.
if you have a lot of money, then you can get a big crew to do all the actual work for you.
Yeah, no kidding.
By the way, Troy, how is your crew? Because I noticed you've been doing some really dramatic push-ins and pulls out. Do you have a cameraman there?
No, it's this web camera thing. Every time I move,
That's a very dramatic push-in. I like it.
every time I move, it just like moves with me. It's now I'm suitably creeped out, you know. But
Nice. Came into a nice close-up there from the medium close-up. I like it.
you know, you must look at the world that way. I know that I do art, and I think in terms of when I look at things, think of them in real life in terms of composition. and color. And I can only imagine for somebody who's a filmmaker that everything is a shot. You know, it would go with you wherever you went. Whether that's a good thing or a bad, I don't know. I just know that it's how you perceive the world, it seems to me. You know,
I see a lot of compositions, especially because, I do a lot of still photography too on the side because I like doing that stuff. So yeah, I tend to look at stuff as, a lot of composition. Everything's composition when I'm looking at stuff. So you just can't, once you start, you can't stop. And it helps to ruin a lot of, once you've made movies, it really helps ruin movies for you because you see every little mistake that you never used to see. You're like, oh, that person's lips didn't match that ADR, it's terrible. And then, you can see shots that are edited where the continuity's off, which you never would have noticed. And, one of my buddies who we started showing him stuff during movies. And now he's like, you've ruined movies for me now. It's like, now I see all those mistakes.
In terms of composition, I learned more from photographers like Stieglitz about arrangement of space than I ever did by looking at great paintings. It's just that the great still photographers, they are composition. That is composition, and they're a library, man. They're awesome. Of course, he was a jerk in real life, but so many of them are.
The other secret I learned as a photographer is the secret to really good photography is to shoot 1,000 pictures, and one of those is going to be really good.
It's gotta be.
99 are garbage.
That's true of everything.
Yeah.
Go with Sturgeon's law.
That's Sturgeon's law.
Sturgeon's law. 90% of everything is crap.
Yeah, I think that's a low percentage.
It is.
Except for The Devil You Know. With that, every story in there is good.
90% of anthologies are crap, but yours is not.
Damn straight.
Right. Absolutely. We're the 10% here. And this was when I put out the anthology call, I gave myself this wide window. I don't know how many months it was for accepting stories, but I said, okay, we'll read through the end of April. Because when we did Gods and Services, it was our first anthology. We were totally untried, paid the same, but it was like, nobody knew who we were. I had a 3-month writing window open, and we maybe got like 30 submissions that came in, and we published 10. With Gods and Services, we had 170 submissions come in, and they started right away. So it was a constant reading frenzy. Like, nobody wants to write about gods. Everybody wants to write about the devil.
How many total submissions did you have for this anthology?
170.
170.
Wow.
So it was to the point where I could not send out individual rejection letters.
Well, we should probably give a shout out to all those losers that didn't make it, huh?
Well, hey, you know what? Some of them were really, really close. And I hope that they will resubmit because we had so much interest in this that, after the next anthology, which I haven't decided on what genre it is yet, but I'm really leaning towards fairies living in a modern world. I want to do The Devil You Know Better. And it's basically had the same cover. I told the cover guy, I said, save that cover because I want him holding the contract and holding up 2 fingers. Because that'll just
Nice.
yeah.
Very cool.
And then all the ones that were very close could have polished things up a little bit and send them in again. And because I had some people say, "Hey, did my story get it?" I'm like, "Oh, I remember yours. It was like almost in there, but I had to cut it off somewhere because I really planned on doing this like Gods and Services. I'm like, okay, I can budget for 10 stories, and then we'll go from there. And there were so many good ones that I'm like, okay, we'll take like 12, 15 max. 20 stories later, it's just, I'm like, okay, it's like April 15th. I had 19 stories then, and it was like silence. It was going dead. April 30th, Damascus Minsmeyer sends me in his. And I write him back and says, damn it, Damascus. I'm supposed to be doing nothing but biding my time. And you cost me money. Because he became the 20th story going into the anthology. He had a really, really good... his story is, and he was going to be here, but then he had to get called out at the last minute. He couldn't make it tonight. His story is best described as Grumpy Old Men meets From Dusk Till Dawn. Uh,
That rocks. Yeah.
it really works, and it was a fun story. So, and it was a reprint. You know, we had 2 people in here who had reprints, which were completely acceptable. I didn't make a policy for it. I said, you know, we'll give first priority to the new stuff, but the 2 reprints that we had, one was from Damascus and the other one was from R.A. Goley, who's in Australia, so she can't make it because it's like, you know, middle of the night there. But I didn't think to say, yeah, reprints will take at a lower rate. I'm like, well, paying the same for, like, you know, big money was on the line here or anything. And I appreciate you guys, you know, taking the leap of faith that it already was to, you know, work with a small publisher like us. You know, we started out, I started out 20 years ago almost doing this kind of thing with a website called thetrades.com, where it was all just movie reviews and book reviews and product reviews. And then they closed down, and I liked getting the material to review for free. So I was like, well, why don't I just start my own website? And then I was like, I was already being published in other books and had done so much editing and so much writing of fiction that I thought, well, I know what my publisher does and I know what my editor does. Can I do that? Can I take my editing of, you know, other people's submissions to my website? Can I take what I know about publishing? And especially now that, you know, places like Ingram Spark and, you know, KDP exist. And as much as that makes it easier to self-publish, it's still a lot of work, and it's still an expense. I mean, you talk about, you know, buying your ISBN number alone is a thing that you have to learn how to do. A lot of people will, you know, you can get a free one from Amazon, but guess what? You don't own your book anymore when you do that. They own all of it, and you can't move it around. So that's a bit of the inside baseball stuff on this whole thing, which you guys probably already know all about. And now we've just told the rest of the world how easy it is to do what we're doing here. So we increase the competition.
We're ruined. Thanks.
We're ruined. Yes. Somebody's already working on the next anthology that I gave the title out for. So like, quick, get out there before Critical Blast does this. And then, you know, my next step is to find out all the different places that do the best horror and science fiction of the year and get it in front of them. So I'm going to be buying extra copies and sending them out to those people, because hopefully one or more of you people will get, you know, picked up for something like that, because I really think that the stories in there are good enough to deserve that kind of a look over.
I think he's talking to everybody else, not me. You guys.
Gosh, I can't remember who does this now. I mean, I've met her. She name checked my book in
Ellen Datlow?
Yes, thank you. Yes, Ellen Datlow.
Yeah.
She's definitely getting a copy.
Yeah, I've read a number of her. I read a ton of horror stuff. You know, it's still one of my favorite genres. But I read, you know, science fiction, fantasy, you know, thriller. So I read a lot of stuff. But I read her. You know, she does a really great job bringing together great stories.
Yeah, I had sent her a copy of Alice when it first came out, and you know, it didn't win anything, but you know, in the front of the book when she says the year in review, it got listed as something to look for. So I was like, well, thank you very much. I met her at Archon convention, ARCHCON, here in St. Louis once every year. Very small science fiction convention. She was there. I signed a copy of it to her and thanked her, and that was that. 20 years later. But you know, that's if you guys know, want to help me out and say, hey, send a copy to these people and to those people. Can't send it to filmmakers, Kevin. I don't know why that is. I mean, when I knew that they were making,
most of them don't know how to read anyway, unless it's a script. So,
well, I know you can't send treatments to filmmakers because they'll send them back unaccepted.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. That's what they should do. You've got to actually corner them in a men's room and shove it in their hands. But when I knew that they were doing the Alice Through the Looking Glass for Tim Burton with Disney, I was like, well, what are they going to do for a third movie? Because there were only 2 books, and they're not exactly following them anyway. My friend said, well, you know, when they did all the Pirates of the Caribbean books, they just found all these obscure pirate novels and bought the rights to them and then adapted them. I'm like, here, you guys take this. Guess what? They sent it back unopened. I'm like, it's not a manuscript. It's published work already. Just take it and go. But alas, no, you're not in Los Angeles with an agent. That's what the agents are for, right?
Yeah, agents and managers. Yeah, yeah. You got to get one of the agents to, you know, tell them it's an established IP, and then they'll take a look at it rather than, you know, if it's just an envelope, they're going to think it's a script, and they'll be like, nope, bye.
Yep, that's exactly what happened.
Yep.
Wasted a lot of priority mail on that. Any of you guys ever shopped out something you've written for production like that, or have you just sent it to the publisher?
I don't even do any of that. It's, you know, like I said, it's I mostly published myself, and then I published myself through somebody else paying for the covers and stuff like that. I'm the wrong person to take part in this part of the interview because I have no experience sending things out and waiting for acceptances or anything like that. I've never considered an agent. I'm going to shut up now and let these guys talk because I have no experience.
Any of you guys worked with agents?
I have lightly worked with some, but I don't have one. I have friends, like I said, Ronald Malfi has a literary agent and somebody else. He actually has an Amazon greenlit series based on one of his new books called Bone White. So he's always talking about them, and there's good and there's bad. So you really don't want one unless you need one, because, you know, they tend to not do as much work as you think. You end up basically, you know, the best time to have one, I found, is when you've already got someone interested in your stuff, because then they'll negotiate all of the finer points where you may get screwed in the aftermath. So that's, you know, once you actually have someone interested, then you get an agent, and it's very easy to get an agent because at that point you've already done all the hard work for them. So then the agent comes in and negotiates all the stuff, and, you know, make sure you don't get screwed in the contracts.
Yeah, sounds like a pretty sweet deal.
Oh yeah, it's funny. In Gods and Services, Ira Bloom had already been published by Scholastic with Hearts and Other Body Parts. Great novel, I recommend it. And he said, yeah, I'd love to send you a short story, and I've got it written, but he had to have a contract, which was the first time I had to put one of those together because his agent was going to get a cut of the $20. So I, of course, you know, went out to the SFWA, and it's like, you know, okay, show me your boilerplate. And I sent it in. He said, send it to these people. And all the attorneys for his agency said, no, here, send this contract and work with this. And he's like, I'm pretty sure they just spent $250 worth of man hours for $3.17. But,
Awesome.
so stick it to the man that way. Guys, we've been here an hour and a half. And all I can say now is that I appreciate everybody who took a chance with us. The book will, I'm sure, be listed in Amazon this week. For those who didn't get the story, the cover needed to be tweaked. The guys were backlogged with other cover work, and they didn't get it back for 2 weeks to me. So it just got resubmitted Saturday morning. Of course, it's a weekend. Nobody's working. Ingram is now processing the book. And since it's just the cover that's being processed, and it fits the format of their template now, it should go straight to Amazon. Of course, the ebook is listed in the description below. And despite the fact that you set a pre-sale date of a certain spot on the calendar, Amazon will put it on pre-sale the second they get it. So the ebook version of The Devil You Know has been on pre-sale on Amazon for almost 2 weeks now. Very, very tempted to just say, release it. But July 1st is the beginning of a new quarter. And we learned with Bulletproof, Steve wanted to release it on October 31st, Halloween, because it was a day for wearing costumes and the character was going to wear a costume. Well, that was great and everything. It went on sale on October 31st, and everybody was anticipating it, that, you know, friends and family kind of thing. October 31st is the last day of the quarter. So his first check came in for 27 cents because that was the cutoff for the quarter. And that was all that it sold that quarter. I was like, you know what? Maybe we might want to time this a little better so that something looks nicer. You know, you want that first check that you make a copy of to go on the wall and show something, not, you know, be the piddling, yeah, you came in at the last minute before accounting shut things down. So we're going to keep the go live date of July 1st and just, you know, sit here getting antsy waiting for it to happen. Hopefully it'll be a success. And, you know, like I told everyone with Gods and Services, if this thing becomes, like, you know, a bestseller, we will renegotiate with everybody who was involved with this. I'm not going to, you know, give you all $20 and make $1 million. If it's something, I'll be in touch with all of you guys. Say, hey, this is a little bit more fair. Did I say that out loud? That was.
You did, in front of a lot of us.
And now it's on the internet, so it lives forever.
And everything on the internet is true. So
This is true. I've seen quotes from Abraham Lincoln telling me that. All right, guys, been a real pleasure. I'm going to let everybody go. Thanks for popping by. And the links that you've got are, of course, Critical Blast links to Amazon. You're not required to use those. If you have your own affiliate account, by all means, use that. Make some extra shekels for your own selves. If you don't, we'd be happy if you use those links, but it's definitely not required. It's just what I do out of habit.
RJ, what links are you talking about?
The link that I sent everybody for the ebook earlier on, which
Oh.
is in the description below, that's an affiliate link so that, you know, Critical Blast makes just a teeny tiny bit more when somebody follows it and buys it.
we
there'll
don't
be
see
a
the
similar
affiliate
for the
link.
trade. Yeah, it's not, you know, a fortune maker by any means, but, you know, it's just every little bit kind of helps. And like I said, if you got your own affiliate accounts that you advertise things with Amazon, by all means, use your account for that kind of thing. We're happy to help you out with that. With that said, I'm going to click in the broadcast, and I'm very surprised that StreamYard cooperated with me for the last hour here with not locking up, not blocking up.
Take that, hackers.
Yeah, apparently all those.
Oh, now you've done it.
Yeah, all those overseas black hats finally went to bed, and now we've got our stream back. So, everybody, The Devil You Know, on sale July 1st from Amazon. Well, actually from everywhere. I say Amazon because it just rolls off the tongue, but it is a real book. It's not just an Amazon KDP book. You can get this at any brick and mortar place. It is in the catalogs. So, by all means, go hit your stores up, ask them to get it, and